everyone, welcome back to Kobayashi Island. This is episode 9. In this episode, we're going to be mainly dealing with getting the style of these dense urban areas down so that it's a little bit quicker and easier to do in future episodes for the downtown area. And then also building out the first of what I hope to be many kind of unique purpose-built areas of the downtown. So in this episode, it's going to be kind of like a glass-covered shopping street, sort of like maybe a flea market or a farmer's market or an antiques market or something like that. It's kind of covered up from the rain or whatever. In future episodes, I got to think of some other things. If you have some suggestions, feel free to comment and let me know what you think could work well in other parts of the downtown. But that's definitely something I want to do, is instead of just making the same buildings over and over, kind of make specific areas with specific purposes, whether or not it functions with that purpose or not. Just sort of like getting a place that, when you build it, you just have an idea in mind of what it's used for. So right now you see me kind of placing down kind of like a restaurant. Actually, I'm imagining this is like a fancy restaurant with like a waterside view of the moat around the government buildings, sort of like on the first floor of like a big office building. A lot of times these big office buildings have sort of like restaurants on the first floor, like maybe fancy restaurants. And this one I'd imagine to be particularly fancy because you have like you're within feet of the water, and that's always kind of a premium. So I kind of wanted to do a lot of stuff like that, where figuring out kind of like practical uses for the land directly next to the moat, and like how, if I was the person who owned the building, how I would best use that land in order to make money and use the fact that you're next to the water to get people there. A lot of these apartment buildings, I wanted to pick ones that had a lot of balconies, so that everyone has their own sort of personal view of the water. And a lot of the buildings that aren't apartment buildings kind of get them to have like restaurants or bars or cafes or something specific next to the water as kind of like their selling point. That's definitely part of the style of this area, I think, is what specifically is going to be next to the water. And I also think that because the moat and the government building is very low to the ground compared to some of these taller buildings that kind of obscure your view, you're going to end up seeing the buildings that are next to the moat a lot more than buildings that are further into the downtown, just because of all the empty space next to them. So I think it's really important that the area directly around the moat looks good, compared to some of these other areas that can kind of just be filled in with a lot of buildings. I kind of make my way around part of the moat in this episode, but I don't get fully all the way around. Right now I'm kind of building out an area that's more just generic buildings and kind of filling out this whole little section with kind of like dense buildings and low-rise buildings mixed with a couple taller buildings in between. I was noticing when I was looking at Google Maps of Tokyo, which obviously the style of this playthrough is sort of based off of, a lot of the city kind of doesn't really have, there are a few exceptions, but a good portion of the city seems to be like pockmarked with skyscrapers, like here and there, but not like a skyscraper district for the most part, where like, it'll be a lot of maybe 10-story buildings, and then just like one tall 30-story building in the middle of it. So I kind of wanted to go for that in the downtown, or at least in the area that's not going to be the sort of like financial area, the skyscraper area. I wanted to have it be lots of low buildings with an occasional 30-story building. So you get kind of like a varying elevation of the buildings, as opposed to, I remember when I was playing the game before I got mods, a couple years ago, and I was really vanilla looking, I would just zone high residential, and it would make a bunch of buildings that were all the same height, and then you kind of just end up, you can't really see any of the buildings in between because they're blocked by all the other buildings. So having like a really good variety of heights of your buildings allows you to kind of see everything a little bit better, which is sort of the same philosophy that I was talking about an episode or two ago, where I was saying the heights of elevation of the land, having that vary is also kind of important in order to be able to see different parts of the city. Having higher areas and lower areas allows you to see smaller buildings that are placed on higher up areas, and kind of gives you a more like layered skyline, which I think always looks good. So one of the things I wanted to just touch on is you may notice that in the city I decided that it was going to be right-handed driving as opposed to left-handed driving, which would be a sort of authentic way to make a Japanese-style city. I know it's kind of lame. I might get some flack for it, but the reason I decided to do that is just that, I'm from a place with right-handed driving, and it's pretty ingrained in my brain to be used to, the way that freeway interchanges connect. I always just worry that I'm going to spend too much time making freeway interchanges if I'm doing it left-hand, because it's just going to take forever trying to remember which on-ramp goes in which direction and where the on-ramp and off-ramp are supposed to connect to, and I'll end up accidentally doing it the wrong way and have to redo it. So in terms of just making things quicker and easier at the expense of the 100% accuracy of the style, I decided to do right-handed driving, and I pretty much always decide to do right-handed driving with my cities just for that same reason. I think it's just quicker and easier. That's kind of the mantra of my city Skylines building in general, is quick and easy. I don't really like having to spend an absurd amount of time on any specific thing. I like being able to kind of quickly throw things together and still make it look good. That's kind of what I aim to do a lot of the time, if not all the time, is get a moderate amount of detail quickly, get things going quickly, and move on to other parts of the city so that I can get the whole entire city looking good, as opposed to one specific area looking really, really good. So I think that's just a general balance and preference thing, but in my mind, I would much rather make a larger city with moderate detail than I would make a small city with extreme detail, because I think that's a good part of why this game is so fun and interesting, is being able to make different style areas, being able to see how the traffic and public transportation and everything goes together in a large city. I kind of think that's how they obviously intended this game to be played when they made it, with a large city. So I think it's just, kind of more fun to just see how you can do stuff on a big scale as opposed to, doing some crazy detailing on a small scale. So right now, I'm just kind of finishing out this glass-covered shopping street. You saw me kind of use two buildings together and a few props copied over and over to make this kind of like walkway through these buildings. I sort of based it off a real thing. I don't even know what it is, but I was just Google image searching, like Japanese market streets, and I saw a few interesting ones that I couldn't really copy because they were sort of like dome glass covered, but I wanted to go for something kind of similar to that because I thought that looked so cool, having like a specific area that is kind of like covered and like clearly planned out and larger and has a specific purpose. I definitely want to make a lot of areas like that. You know, the glass street is a good example, but another example might be like a ferry port, or like a museum row, or like a high class shopping district, or an apartment complex, or things like that where it maybe takes up a few blocks of space. It's kind of larger, so I kind of want to do that in a number of different places in downtown to kind of make it, each little area have its own centerpiece and vibe. So what you see me right now doing is building out a custom parking lot. If you watch the how to make custom parking lots video that I released, you can see sort of step by step I explain how to do this. I remember I was just sort of playing around with these horizontal pillars and vertical pillars in the ploppable asphalt and realized that you could do this, and I've been doing it ever since because it's such a cool way to make something that's like such a unique shape, and it fits right into the area that's left for it. So I think you can really do some interesting stuff as opposed to the ones from the workshop. At this point I pretty much try to avoid the ones from the workshop because it's very rare that I have a space that's a perfect rectangle. And the other cool thing about those parking structures is they're pretty functional. Even though you saw me put down parked cars just to make it look full, all those spaces are functional, so as the city needs parking, people will park there even more. So we're getting towards the end of the episode here. You kind of see me filling out the backside of this shopping street with a few buildings nestled in, making a little alley, making a couple little stores, an office building. Right now I'm about to start building out a little tiny beach that I thought it was kind of interesting, instead of using this as a place for a building, to make it into like a little park, especially because if I were to put a big building here, it would block the view of that shopping street that I just made. So I wanted something very low to the ground so that if you're looking at this area, you can still see the shopping street. I think by this point in the episode, I've kind of figured out the general look and feel of the downtown and what I kind of want to do in the next episode or two, finishing out this area that has all the networks planned out. This particular area is so close to the main train station that I'm not dealing with any train stations, but in the next episode or two, I definitely am going to be messing around with the train stations that I put down last episode. This last thing I'm about to do is I noticed that in the evenings I hadn't placed down lights in a lot of areas. I mean, I'm personally fascinated by lighting design, so I think I really enjoy the fact that you can do some cool lighting design in this game. So I placed down a lot of lanterns and floodlights and stuff, even going back to the central station a couple episodes ago, placing down some floodlights there to kind of make it just a hair brighter. But that's about it for this episode. Next episode, I'm going to continue making my way around the moat, placing down more downtown buildings, and probably figure out another specific area or two to make. So look forward to that. Until next time.